Political science textbooks always say that the question hour is the most important thing in parliaments. It's the only place where any MP from any party can ask questions, and it's incumbent for the government to sort of respond to these questions that MPs ask. So it's the only place or the only forum in the parliament where the government is held accountable. So I just thought it's an interesting place to start. The reason why we chose that is because we wanted to study how our legislators actually behave, what kind of floor, and if parties have some kind of floor strategies, or if there's some kind of thinking that goes on within the parliament. As citizens, we are very skeptical and very cynical about our legislature and about our politicians, but that doesn't give us good solutions unless we have good data. So that's why we started in this project, to sort of get the right kind of data to sort of analytically examine our parliament. What we have is the name of the MP, their date of birth, educational background, and for the particular term that they were elected, the number of questions that they asked. The thing is that in every parliamentary session, more than 75,000 to 80,000 questions are asked. And each MP can ask something like 1,000 to 1,000, sometimes 200, sometimes 1,000 questions. The textual data is not available online, and it's just a huge task. If you think 75,000 questions per every 4 years, that's something like 700, 800,000 questions. It's physically impossible, for one single researcher to start, especially. And anyway, we don't get that textual data. It will run into thousands and thousands of pages. So we just started with a number of questions because that's easy to start with. And I must also say that this is an exploratory exercise because no one had done this before. We wanted to actually see if there are some consistent patterns that emerge from this data. So that's why we were doing this more as an exploratory analysis rather than actually having very strong sort of hypothesis in studying this data in the first place. You are representing an underprivileged group, therefore you should be concerned about how accountable the government is. You should take governance much more seriously than this random mail. I mean, that's the natural connection, right? Unfortunately, we don't find that. We find that only they tend to participate much less. So I think the stereotypes about society, where women are much more docile, and the scheduled tribes, also reflects itself in the parliament. Just because they come from underprivileged groups has not shown that they are much more effective representatives of their own groups, not necessarily. We need more data to say that much more confidently, but with the data that we have, we are saying that they are not as effective. They are as effective as anyone else. I think the point is this. I mean, if you want to change the system, or if you want to change an institution, wisdom and experience matters, but it only matters to a certain extent. It has to be backed up by data. It has to be backed up by some kind of research. In other words, we need to know what matters and what doesn't matter, and what is consistent. Once we know that, it is easy to frame rules. And the idea is that rules create certain incentives. So we have a parliament. The parliament is a bunch of rules. People know how to break it. Now we want to stop people from breaking those rules. So we have to create new rules. How do we create new rules? By having fresh data that will provide us insights about how they broke it, so that we can create new rules to stop them from breaking it. Tomorrow they will break the same rules. Human beings are very ingenious. So maybe 20 years from now we'll learn to break the rules that we create today. But that's an iterative process. So I think our basic contribution would be in helping redesigning our institutions in the long run.